My fiancé secretly changed our marriage contract to take everything I own, so I changed the bride and left him standing at the altar, with someone from his past who had a contract of his own. My hands gripped the edge of the desk as I forced myself to breathe. My pulse hammered in my ears, drowning out the quiet hum of the city outside. I read the contract again, each word slicing through the illusion I had built around Liam. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Liam had deliberately altered our agreement, ensuring that if our marriage ended, everything I owned would be his. Not just our shared assets but my own wealth, my inheritance, my business shares. Everything I had worked for. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for being part of this incredible journey. If you love stories of justice, resilience, and unexpected twists, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us bring more stories like this to life. Now let's begin. I felt the weight of betrayal settle in my chest, heavy and suffocating. How long had he planned this? From the very beginning? Had every whispered "I love you," every promise of forever, been carefully designed to lead me here? I tried to think logically, to piece together how this had happened. I had signed the marriage contract without a second thought, trusting him completely. He had reassured me, smiled at me, kissed my forehead like I was a child who didn't need to worry about grown-up matters. You don't have to read through it, love. It's just standard legal work. And I had believed him. I clenched my fists, anger and humiliation swirling inside me. I had been blind. I might have accepted the betrayal, might have let heartbreak consume me, if it had only been about me. But it wasn't. Because then I saw her name. Charlotte Grant. My stomach twisted as I scrolled through the file, my breath catching at the words prior marital commitments. Liam's first wife. The woman he had never spoken about in detail. The woman whose existence had been carefully erased from his life. And then, beneath her name, a legal note that made my blood turn to ice. Marital status. Legally unresolved. Not divorced. Not separated. Legally unresolved. The room spun for a second and I gripped the edge of the desk, my knuckles white. Liam wasn't just trying to take everything I owned, he had never even ended his last marriage. I forced myself to read on, my vision blurring with sheer disbelief. Charlotte Grant had once been a rising figure in the business world, much like myself. She had inherited part of her family's wealth, invested in multiple ventures, and according to the articles I found online, had been poised to take over a multi-million-dollar company. Until she wasn't. Her name had vanished from the business world almost overnight. No statements, no legal battles, no explanation. Just gone. Liam had done this before. And if I hadn't found these documents, he would have done it again. I took a shaky breath, forcing my thoughts into order. I had two choices. I could confront him. I could scream, demand explanations, throw accusations at his feet and listen to his smooth, practiced lies. Or I could be smarter than him. I clicked out of the document, grabbed my phone and typed Charlotte Grant's name into a search bar. There were old photos, articles from years ago. Her attending business conferences, shaking hands with executives. A poised, sharp-eyed woman with dark auburn hair and a confident smile. But no recent traces. Until I checked the legal records. A case buried beneath layers of bureaucratic jargon. Financial disputes. Property transfers. A name Liam hadn't managed to erase. I took a slow breath, then dialed the number. 1 ring. 2. 3. Then finally a voice. "Oh, wary. Who is this?" I hesitated for half a second. Then with steady resolve I answered. "My name is Lydia. I think we have something in common." "His name is Liam." The silence stretched, thick and charged. Then a quiet exhale. "Where do you want to meet?" I set the phone down, my heart pounding. This wasn't just about me anymore. Liam had made the mistake of thinking I was just another woman he could control, manipulate, and discard. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I sat in my car outside the small cafe, my fingers drumming against the steering wheel. A warm breeze rustled through the street, carrying the scent of fresh coffee and baked bread. People passed by, unaware of the storm brewing beneath my calm exterior. Charlotte Grant. I had spent the night combing through every bit of information I could find on her. She had been a powerhouse in her industry, a woman who had commanded boardrooms with sharp intellect and relentless ambition. And then she had vanished, her legacy reduced to whispers and unanswered questions. Now she was about to walk through the doors of this cafe. I checked my phone for the third time in as many minutes. No messages. No last-minute cancellations. He was coming. A black sedan pulled up across the street, sleek and inconspicuous. My heart pounded as the driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. She was tall, striking, with auburn hair that fell in loose waves over her shoulders. A pair of dark sunglasses shielded her eyes, but I could feel the weight of her gaze as she crossed the street with effortless poise. I swallowed the lump in my throat and slid out of my car. She reached me before I could say a word. "Lydia." Her voice was steady, measured, but there was a hint of something beneath it. Something wary. I nodded. "Charlotte." We stood there for a moment, sizing each other up. It was an odd feeling, meeting a woman who should have been a stranger but felt anything but. She was the past. I was the present. And yet somehow we had both been cast in the same role. I motioned toward the cafe. "Shall we?" She hesitated before giving a slight nod. We walked inside, the scent of espresso wrapping around us. The cafe was nearly empty, the lunch rush long gone. A waitress glanced up, ready to take our order, but we waved her off. We sat by the window, the city stretching beyond the glass like an indifferent witness to what was about to unfold. Charlotte removed her sunglasses and placed them on the table. Her eyes were sharp, unreadable. "Tell me everything." I inhaled deeply, then started. I told her about Liam. About how we met, how perfect it all seemed. About the engagement, the grand promises, the way he had woven himself seamlessly into my life. And then I told her about the contract. As I spoke, her expression didn't change. She listened in silence, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. When I finished, a heavy stillness settled between us. Finally she exhaled. "He hasn't changed." A bitter smile tugged at the corner of her lips. I leaned forward. "Tell me what happened." She tilted her head, considering me. Then with a slow nod she began. "I met Liam 5 years ago," she said, her voice calm, detached. "He was charming, attentive. He made me feel like I was the only person in the world who mattered." She scoffed. "Sound familiar?" I nodded, my stomach tightening. "We got married quickly. He made it seem urgent, romantic. He told me we were meant to be." Her fingers tapped lightly against the table. "At first it was perfect. But then little things started to shift. He became secretive about finances, always insisting that I let him handle everything." I clenched my hands together, my own memories slotting into place. Charlotte's gaze darkened. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. He had positioned everything so that if I ever left, I would have nothing. A bitter laugh escaped her. And then one day I found out the truth. He wasn't just trying to take my money. He had been planning my financial downfall from the beginning. Every business move I made, every asset I acquired, he had a hand in. And when I confronted him, he acted like I was being dramatic. She met my gaze. "That's when I made a mistake." I swallowed. "What mistake?" "I trusted the legal system." A cold chill ran through me. I thought I could fight him. I thought I could take back what was mine. But he had already set everything up in his favor. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "He left me with nothing. And when I tried to expose him, he buried me in legal battles until I was forced to disappear." I felt sick. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "And now he's doing the same to you." I took a slow, steady breath. No, my voice was firm. She raised an eyebrow. I met her gaze. "Because I'm not going to let him." For the first time, something shifted in her expression. A flicker of curiosity. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the document. "He made a mistake this time. He never finalized your divorce. Legally, you're still his wife." Charlotte's eyes widened slightly. I pushed the phone across the table. "Which means everything he's trying to do to me. It's meaningless. Because you're still his legal spouse." He picked up the phone, scanning the document. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her lips. Well. She looked up, something sharp and calculating in her gaze. "That's interesting." I nodded. "So here's what we're going to do." I laid out the plan, my pulse steady now, my mind clear. Liam had spent years perfecting his game. But he had underestimated one thing. This time he wasn't just facing one woman he had wronged. He was facing two. Charlotte listened, her expression unreadable. Then after a long pause she extended her hand. I clasped it without hesitation. The deal was sealed. Liam had no idea what was coming. The morning of the wedding arrived with a deceptive calm. Sunlight streamed through the towering windows of my hotel suite, casting golden patterns across the marble floor. The world outside bustled with anticipation, oblivious to the storm brewing behind my composed exterior. I stood before the vanity, watching my reflection as a makeup artist dusted highlighter across my cheekbones. My wedding dress, an intricate masterpiece of lace and silk, hung on a padded hanger near the door. It should have been the most important day of my life. A day of love, of promises, of forever. But today was not about love. It was about retribution. Charlotte sat across the room, her legs crossed, fingers lightly tapping against the armrest of a velvet chair. She looked unshaken, a silent storm contained within a composed exterior. Her dress, identical to mine, was draped across a chair beside her. The symbolism was not lost on either of us. A knock sounded at the door and my wedding coordinator peeked in, beaming. "Lydia, everything is set. Guests are arriving. You look stunning." I offered a serene smile. "Thank you." She hesitated, sensing my cool demeanor but didn't question it. Instead she bustled out, leaving Charlotte and me alone again. The plan was in motion. Liam had no idea that while he stood at the altar waiting for me, someone else was preparing to take my place. I rose to my feet, smoothing invisible creases from my silk robe. Charlotte followed suit, stepping toward me until we were mere inches apart. "This is it," I murmured. Charlotte met my gaze, a glint of satisfaction flickering in her dark eyes. "Are you sure you don't want to be the one standing there?" I shook my head. "He's expecting me. If I'm not there, he won't suspect anything. Not until it's too late." She exhaled, nodding. "Then let's give him a wedding he'll never forget." The next few hours passed in a haze of carefully orchestrated chaos. Hair, makeup, last-minute adjustments. The guests filled the grand hall, murmuring in admiration of the elaborate floral arrangements, the soft glow of chandeliers, the luxurious opulence of it all. Liam stood at the altar, the perfect image of a devoted groom. He wore confidence like a well-tailored suit, flashing a charming smile to those who offered congratulations. He had no idea that he was about to face the biggest reckoning of his life. Charlotte, hidden away in a private bridal suite, was minutes from taking her place at his side. I remained in my room watching the countdown unfold from a security feed on my phone. The live footage from the venue revealed the sea of elegantly dressed guests, the photographers poised for the moment the bride made her entrance. My heart pounded, not with fear but with the thrill of justice. Then the doors to the grand hall opened. Every guest turned, their collective breath catching as the bride stepped forward. Veiled, poised, unreadable. Charlotte walked with the practiced grace of a woman who had once been part of this world. She carried herself as if she belonged there, her posture regal, her movements precise. Liam didn't flinch. He didn't hesitate. He was so blinded by his own certainty, his own arrogance, that he saw exactly what he expected to see. Me. I watched as he straightened, a slow smile stretching across his lips. The music swelled. Charlotte continued forward, her steps deliberate, calculated. Liam reached for her hand as she arrived at the altar. His fingers curled around hers. The officiant cleared his throat, beginning the ceremony. The air in the room felt charged, thick with unspoken truths. I remained in my suite, fingers tightening around my phone as I watched the scene unfold. The ceremony moved forward, each word bringing him closer to the moment of realization. Closer to the moment when everything he thought he controlled would unravel before his eyes. Charlotte stood in perfect silence as the officiant asked Liam the question that would bind him to his new bride. "Do you, Liam Carter, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward?" Liam grinned, his confidence unwavering. "I do." A slow, knowing smile spread across Charlotte's lips beneath her veil. And I knew he had just sealed his own fate. The words hung in the air like a heavy weight pressing down on the grand hall. "I do." Liam's voice carried confidence, his tone steady, assured. He was a man who believed he had won, who thought he had just secured his future with the wealth and power he had always chased. He had no idea what was about to happen. The officiant turned to the bride, still veiled, still silent. A moment of pause stretched, just enough to make the guests lean forward, anticipation buzzing through the air. Then Charlotte's voice, calm and unwavering, rang out. "I do." I watched from the screen in my private suite, my fingers clenched into my palms. The cameras flashed, guests sighing at the beauty of the moment, completely oblivious to the reckoning that was about to unfold. The officiant smiled, lifting his hand toward Charlotte. "You may now lift the veil and kiss your bride." Liam turned, his hands reaching out with an easy grace, his fingers curling under the delicate fabric. He had no hesitation, no inkling that his world was seconds away from imploding. And then he lifted it. A sharp, collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Liam's confident expression froze. His lips parted slightly, his breath caught in his throat as he stared into the face of the woman he thought he had erased from his life. Charlotte. 100 emotions flickered across his face in a matter of seconds. Confusion, disbelief, realization, and then something that looked like sheer panic. The silence in the room was deafening. The guests, elegantly dressed and seated in perfectly arranged rows, turned to each other, murmuring in confusion. Whispers swirled like a growing storm, eyes darting between Liam and the woman standing before him, the woman who was not supposed to be there. From my screen, I watched as Liam's grip on the veil tightened, his knuckles going white. His body tensed, a ripple of unease rolling through him. He wasn't a man used to losing control. He wasn't used to being blindsided. His voice, usually smooth and commanding, came out in a strangled whisper. What is this?" Charlotte tilted her head slightly, her lips curving into a small, knowing smile. "Oh, Liam." Her voice was gentle, almost pitying. "You didn't really think you could leave me behind, did you?" A murmur of shock swept through the audience. Some guests turned to each other, questions forming on their lips. Others leaned forward, eyes wide with disbelief. Liam's posture stiffened, his shoulders pulling back as he fought to maintain his composure. This is a joke," he said, forcing a chuckle though his voice wavered. His eyes flickered across the room, searching for me for a way out, for an answer that didn't exist. Charlotte took a slow step closer, the bouquet still held loosely in her hands. "No joke, Liam," she said, tilting her head. "Just unfinished business." Liam's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed, his mind scrambling for a way to fix what was unraveling before him. Then Charlotte lifted a perfectly manicured hand and placed a small stack of crisp papers on the altar. The murmur in the room grew louder. Liam's gaze darted to the documents, recognition flickering in his eyes. I didn't need to hear his thoughts to know what was happening in his mind. He was realizing what was in front of him, realizing just how deep he was in. "Charlotte, whatever this is." His voice had lost its confident edge now, his mask slipping. Charlotte cut him off. "This, Liam, is a reminder. A little legal formality, if you will. You never divorced me. Which means..." She lifted a single brow, her smile widening. "This wedding? It isn't legal." Liam's breath hitched. His hands clenched into fists. The room had gone completely still. The guests who had arrived expecting an extravagant ceremony, now sat in frozen silence, their gazes bouncing between Liam and Charlotte like spectators at the most unexpected drama of the decade. Charlotte let the weight of her words settle, let Liam squirm under the pressure. Then, with the practiced elegance of a woman who had waited years for this moment, she reached down and picked up the stack of papers, flipping to the last page. "Since you never filed the divorce, Liam," she continued, her tone almost conversational, "it turns out you owe me quite a bit. Legally speaking, of course." The cameras flashed again, but this time the expressions of the photographers weren't ones of admiration. They were of intrigue, of scandal. Liam looked like a man watching his own foundation crumble beneath him. "Charlotte." She lifted a finger, silencing him. "I'd save my words if I were you. You're going to need a very good lawyer." A low ripple of whispers spread through the room. And then, just as Liam's panic hit its peak, I stepped into the aisle. His head snapped toward me, his entire body jerking as if he had just noticed I was missing this whole time. "Lydia." His voice was strained, desperate now. I walked forward slowly, my heels clicking softly against the polished floor. "Oh, Liam," I echoed Charlotte's words, stopping just feet from him. I let the moment hang between us, let him drown in the weight of realization. Then I tilted my head and smiled. "Hope it works out for you." The silence in the room shattered as the first laugh rang out. A sharp, disbelieving chuckle from one of the guests, followed by another, then another. The tension cracked, splintering into murmurs, hushed voices, scandalized whispers. Liam stood motionless, his hands shaking slightly, his entire carefully built world crumbling around him. He had spent years controlling narratives, manipulating situations, ensuring that he always came out on top. But today, for the first time in his life, he had lost. Liam's face had lost its color entirely. His hands twitched at his sides, his once carefully poised confidence now cracked beyond repair. His gaze darted between me and Charlotte as if searching for some last-minute escape, a loophole in this disaster that he hadn't foreseen. There was none. The murmurs in the grand hall had shifted from confusion to scandal. Guests whispered behind raised hands, phones discreetly lifted to capture the moment, their screens flashing as they recorded every second of his downfall. Liam opened his mouth, desperate to reclaim control. "This is ridiculous. Whatever game you two think you're playing." Charlotte cut him off, her expression calm, almost amused. She lifted the stack of legal documents from the altar and gave them a little flick, straightening the pages with deliberate ease. "Oh, Liam. This isn't a game. This is just closure." She turned, holding the papers up for all to see. The embossed seal of the court glinted under the chandelier light, undeniable and absolute. For those of you wondering, Charlotte addressed the audience now, her voice carrying easily across the hushed room. "Liam here never quite managed to finalize his first marriage. Meaning this wedding? Legally invalid." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone at the back let out an incredulous laugh. Liam's jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists, his breathing uneven now. "Charlotte, we can talk about this. Whatever you want." "What I want?" Charlotte's laugh was light, but her eyes were steely. "I already have what I want, Liam. Justice." She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "You should have been more careful. You forgot something. You never actually divorced me. And that means legally I still have rights to your assets." Liam's lips parted slightly, his pupils blown wide as reality slammed into him like a freight train. "No," he whispered. Charlotte simply smiled. "Yes." The officiant, still standing awkwardly at the altar, cleared his throat. Does this mean we stop the ceremony?" A man from the second row let out a loud, wheezing laugh, and just like that, the tension in the room broke. Conversations erupted all around us, some guests whispering in hushed tones, others gleefully recording the greatest wedding scandal they had ever witnessed. Liam turned to me now, his last shred of hope hanging by a thread. "Lydia," he said, his voice raw. "You don't have to do this. We can fix this. Whatever you think." "Oh no, Liam." I let out a soft chuckle, shaking my head. "I don't think anything." "I know. And you? You're out of moves." I took another step forward, just enough to lean in and lower my voice. "The contracts Charlotte has? Those aren't just for show. She's already filed to claim her share of what's rightfully hers. And since you were so focused on stealing from me, you never realized," I lifted my chin slightly, reveling in the moment, "that she was the only one who ever had the legal right to take everything from you." Liam staggered back as if the words had physically hit him. It was over. The legal documents were airtight. Charlotte had already begun the process before stepping into the wedding hall, ensuring that there was nothing he could do to contest it. Every loophole he had used against others was now closing around him like an iron cage. And he knew it. His breaths came in short, uneven bursts, his eyes darting between Charlotte and me as if searching for some last-minute escape. I can fight this." He turned sharply to one of his closest business associates, a man standing near the front row. "John, you know this isn't true. You know." John simply raised a hand, cutting him off with a slow shake of his head. His expression was unreadable, but his silence was damning. Liam turned to another guest, a longtime family friend, his desperation clawing through the cracks. "Mark, say something. This can't be legal, can it?" Mark didn't respond. No one did. His allies, his friends, the very people who had once sung his praises, were all watching him unravel, and none of them were stepping forward to help. Liam had built his empire on deception, but when the walls came crashing down, there was no one left to hold them up for him. Charlotte took a step back, adjusting the folds of her dress with effortless grace. "Well, Liam, it's been fun. But I have a lawyer waiting for me and quite a bit of paperwork to finalize. So if you'll excuse me," she turned to the officiant, offering a polite nod. "You may officially declare this ceremony void." The officiant looked between us, then back at Liam, clearly out of his depth. In that case. He cleared his throat, glancing at the audience awkwardly. I now pronounce this wedding not happening? Laughter erupted from the guests, some standing to get better angles on their recordings, others shaking their heads in disbelief at the spectacle unfolding before them. Liam stood motionless, his face ashen, his world collapsing in real time. I turned toward the aisle, my heels clicking softly against the polished floor as I made my way toward the exit. The grand doors loomed ahead, promising freedom, victory, and the sweet satisfaction of justice. Charlotte walked beside me, her pace steady, her presence unwavering. Before stepping through, I paused, glancing back just once. Liam was still frozen in place, his fists clenched, his shoulders rigid with the weight of his downfall. I tilted my head slightly, offering him a final parting smile. You really should have picked the right bride, Liam. Then without another word, I turned and walked away. The grand doors of the wedding hall closed behind me with a soft finality, but the echoes of Liam's downfall still lingered in the air. Outside, the crisp afternoon sun cast golden streaks across the marble steps, a sharp contrast to the chaos unraveling inside. Charlotte walked beside me, her movements unhurried, her expression unreadable. We had done what we came to do. The battle was over, and Liam Carter, once untouchable, once untamed, had finally faced the weight of his own deception. But I knew it wasn't over for him. Not yet. As we reached the sleek black car waiting at the curb, I glanced back one last time. Through the massive glass windows of the venue, I saw the flurry of guests still in their seats, some still whispering, others reveling in the scandal they had just witnessed. Liam, however, had not moved. He stood at the altar, his jaw tight, his fists clenched, staring at the space where I had just walked away. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered every lie, every betrayal, every careful manipulation designed to take everything from me. No, Liam deserved this. Every second of it. Charlotte pulled the car door open, her movements effortless as she slid inside. I followed, settling into the cool leather seat as the driver pulled away from the venue. Silence stretched between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that came after a storm. Calm, resolute, final. After several minutes, Charlotte let out a small, knowing chuckle. Well, she mused, crossing one leg over the other. That was fun. I exhaled, a slow smile curling my lips. More than I expected. She turned to face me fully. Do you think he'll try to fight it? Liam was many things. A strategist, a master manipulator. But he wasn't foolish. He knew when he was beaten. He might, I admitted. But it won't matter. The contracts are airtight. He has no legal ground to stand on. And even if he did, I trailed off, tilting my head as I stared out the window at the passing city. His reputation is ruined. And that was the final nail in the coffin. Liam had built his world on image, on connections, on the illusion of control. He had charmed his way into powerful circles, convinced people he was invincible. But now he was the man who had been publicly exposed at his own wedding. The man who had been outplayed by the two women he underestimated. And that was a stain he would never be able to wash away. Charlotte hummed, nodding as she reached into her bag and pulled out a thin folder. I took the liberty of finalizing everything, she said smoothly, flipping the cover open. The court proceedings will begin next week. By the time this is over, Liam won't just be reputationless. He'll be broke. I studied the papers, scanning over the legal jargon. It was perfect. He had nothing left to cling to. I let out a slow breath, a weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying slipping from my shoulders. He thought he had us both trapped, I murmured, my fingers grazing the edge of the folder. But in the end, he was the one with nowhere to run. Charlotte smirked. Poetic, isn't it? I met her gaze, something unspoken passing between us. We had both been his victims once. Now we were the ones writing the ending to his story. And I had no doubt, this was an ending he would never forget. The car slowed to a stop in front of my building. Charlotte leaned back, stretching her arms with a satisfied sigh. I'll handle the next steps, she said, her tone almost casual. You? I smiled, gripping the handle of the door. I'm going to enjoy my life, I said simply. Without him in it. Charlotte chuckled, nodding. Good choice. I stepped out of the car, the warm breeze brushing against my skin as I turned toward the entrance. Behind me, the car pulled away, carrying Charlotte toward the next stage of Liam's downfall. Me. I walked forward, toward my own future. Free. The automatic doors of my apartment building slid open, and I stepped inside, leaving behind the whirlwind of a day that had rewritten the ending of a story Liam thought he had authored. The air conditioning was a welcome contrast to the lingering warmth outside, but it wasn't just the temperature shift that filled me with relief. It was the realization that I was free. For months, I had unknowingly walked toward a trap, one carefully laid with whispered promises, shared dreams, and the illusion of love. But in the end, the snare had closed around him. I took the elevator to my floor, my mind drifting back to the chaos of the wedding hall. The way the guests had gasped, the flicker of horror in Liam's eyes, the moment his perfect facade cracked for the world to see. He had spent years mastering deception, but in those final moments he had nothing left to hide behind. And that was what truly destroyed him. When the elevator doors opened, I walked into my apartment, locking the door behind me. The silence was comforting, a stark contrast to the clinking of champagne glasses and the murmurs of high society gossip that had filled my life for the past few months. I slipped off my heels, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I expected to feel exhaustion, maybe even the remnants of bitterness, but all I felt was light. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen. Charlotte. A smirk tugged at my lips as I answered. Tell me you're enjoying the aftershock. Charlotte let out a soft chuckle. More than I should admit. The media is already running with it. His downfall is public now, Lydia. There's no coming back from this. I leaned against the counter, feeling something close to satisfaction settle in my chest. Good. Charlotte hummed, clearly pleased. He's going to try to salvage what's left, you know. But it won't be enough. His business partners are already distancing themselves, his assets are under review, and by the time I'm done with the legal proceedings, he'll be lucky if he can afford an apartment in a mediocre part of town. I smiled, not out of malice but because justice had been served. Let him scramble, I said, reaching for a glass of water. It won't change anything. No, Charlotte agreed, her voice lighter than I'd ever heard it. It won't. There was a pause, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Finally she sighed. I guess this is where we part ways. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Guess so. Charlotte had been part of this chapter of my life. A key player in unraveling the tangled web Liam had spun. But now we were two women with our own paths, our own futures to reclaim. For what it's worth, she added, you handled this better than I ever did. I let out a soft laugh. I had you to learn from. She chuckled. Take care, Lydia. You too, Charlotte. With that, the call ended. I set my phone down, staring out the window at the city stretching beyond. The skyline looked different tonight, as if I were seeing it through new eyes. The weight of betrayal was no longer tethered to me, the bitterness of deception no longer clouding my vision. I was done. With Liam. With the lies. With all of it. And for the first time in a long time, the thought of tomorrow didn't feel like a question mark. It felt like possibility. A final text buzzed on my screen. I glanced down. Liam, we need to talk. A quiet laugh escaped me. No, we didn't. I let my fingers hover over the keyboard before typing my final words to him. Hope it works out for you. Then without hesitation I blocked his number. And just like that he was gone. I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of water and walked onto my balcony. The city lights stretched before me, endless and full of life. I took a slow sip, breathing in the night air. The chapter was closed. My story. It was just beginning.